we're right at 9 o'clock. So do y'all feel like we should go ahead and get started? Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the first office hours of 2025. We are so excited to continue to get together with you all, to be able to for you to share your questions with us, and us as a group, roll those questions around and come up with some different ideas of what's going on, and then to share that with y'all. So we really want this to be interactive, and the only way that we can make sure that that keeps happening is if you guys keep putting your questions into the question portal. If you get confused on where to find everything, I know there's a different link for the Zoom, there's a different link for the questions, there's a different link for the map. Always remember that all you have to do is go to uthort.com. On the homepage, you go to about like the middle area, you're going to see a big box that says office hours, and everything that you need. You're going to be able to access right there with one click. Okay, so don't get confused on that, but keep sending us your questions. We're going to keep answering them. We love to kind of break the time up that we have with you all in the mornings, and kind of attack fruit and veggie, ornamentals, landscape, and turf grass if we have any turf grass questions. So we're going to kind of follow that same format today. And I'm also going to ask, let's just all go ahead and introduce ourselves real quick, the panelists, so that way we don't, forget to do that whenever time comes up. So if you haven't been with us before, my name is Celeste Scott, and I'm the horticulture specialist for UT Extension in the Western region. So I'm over here in Jackson. Glad to be hosting us, facilitating our talk today. Anna?
Oh, okay. I'm Anna Duncan, and I am the curriculum and digital training specialist for plant sciences.
Bob?
I'm Bob Avery. I'm extension agent in Robertson County, Master Gardener Coordinator.
Lee?
Lee Rumble. I'm a commercial horticulture extension agent over in Knox County and an ISA certified arborist.
Kelly?
I am the Consumer Horticulture Extension Agent in Murray County, and I'm also the Master Gardener Coordinator.
Natalie?
I am the Consumer Horticulture Extension Specialist, and I work out of Knoxville and am actually there today.
Yay! Seth?
I'm the extension agent in Anderson County and the Master Gardener Coordinator in Anderson County as well.
And we've saved the best for last, Mr. Greg.
Greg Upchurch. I'm the Ag Agent and Master Gardener Coordinator in Cumberland County here on the Plateau.
All right. So, and we're going to have more agents and specialists joining us as we go through our series of office hours this year. This is just our crew that was available to hop on and have some coffee and do some chatting about plants this morning. So let's just dive right in. Since we do have so many questions about ornamental horticulture, kind of concerning trees and shrubs, I feel like let's just go ahead and start there. And I will, if this is okay with everybody else, since we're having a little issue on the backside with our map, I'll be kind of directing which questions we're going to go with just according to what pictures I find first. Okay. So let's see here. We had some really good questions. I'm going to find the one that was about the U. Lee, did you look at those pictures? Okay, so
No.
Is there?
I really was challenged with the photo, Celeste. I never was able to find except for the juniper photo. I don't.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
gotcha. No, that's okay, no problem.
Yeah, if you pull them up, we can talk about them though. For
Definitely,
sure. So,
definitely.
yeah.
I'm gonna be sifting through here to find that particular picture, but I'll tell you what the scenario is. So they have a border planting of yew that they have been shearing into a hedge. They're kind of along a retaining wall of sorts. So you've got lawn, we've got the yews, we've got the retaining wall, and then a driveway down beneath it. And a section of that yew has begun to brown out, and it seems like it's continuing to spread on either side there. And so I thought that that was something interesting for us to talk about because we've had so much rain this spring. We have been seeing more disease on especially woody ornamentals, maybe than we normally would expect to see. And there are a couple things that could be going on with that. Yews are susceptible to root rot. They can also have issues with like needle blight, twig blight, that can cause browning. And so it's hard for me to talk and look for pictures at the same time. So if anybody else wants to throw their 2 cents in on just disease in general and how that's we've been seeing that across the state while I look for our picture here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in here, Celeste. I 100% agree. I mean, we have been waterlogged, it seems like, since January. I know that's probably not true, but we've had a lot of rain. And with retaining walls, sometimes that water may flow in a different type of style. It may not drain equally, or there may be drain ports on one side that could be clogged, drain ports that are open on the other. So with yews, I'm probably going to suspect something root related. That's not necessarily going to be the case, but if this is a stand of yews that has done extremely well over the last 20 or 30 years and it's just popped up this year, I might would start with root rots, and that's an easy test. We can go down and pull some of those absorbing roots, look at those root sheaths. If they're blackened, if they're discolored, they're not creamy white or a slight beige or yellow. What I would say at that point is then we may have a root rot. Can you pull that root sheath off of that interior root? That's a really good test. Also, that root will be real mushy, so you might go look at that. Again, I've not seen this image, Celeste, so I'm looking for. Oh yeah, ouch. Okay. Yeah. So, goodness, boy, it is spreading, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, I was just gonna say you can definitely tell where it started for likely last year, I believe, in their description over here, and those have
Okay.
completely defoliated, and now we see it progressing into this healthier section of that planting, and you can see now that the foliage is gone. Definitely plant 1, plant 2, and now it's spreading here to plant 3. We can see the base of those plants there.
Yeah, and in a situation like this, I'm more than likely going to really encourage the submission to our UT Soil
Yeah.
Plant and Pest Center. This is something we obviously don't want to spread. It's probably spread a little further than the homeowner or client would like to see already. But I will mention that mulch, check those mulches. They look like they've been built up year after year. They may be smothering root crowns. That moisture could be holding against the bark and leading to separation of the bark from the interior wood. It's hard to say 100% with certainty, but I would question if water's not potentially holding in this area. And then we also got to remember, Celeste, shearing of woody shrubs is stressful, right? Every time we get a new bout of new growth, we're pruning that off. We get a new spout of growth, we prune it off. So certainly, having a little bit more of that, less sheared look can be beneficial, to let some of that new growth kind of sustain life for a longer period of time.
Yeah, that's
Help
true. And
for sure.
so definitely if we're going to send a sample into the lab, I want to mention here, just so everybody can be prepared as we move into the growing season, we don't want to take only dead tissue, right? We want to send in some healthy tissue. We want to send in some of this branch that maybe has healthy and some foliage that's showing some symptoms, right? On there at the same time, because I can't tell anything if all we do is just send in the material that's already dry and dead. So we want to make sure that we send in a good sample for them to be able to process that and see if they can find any spores or any kind of issues going on there. So unfortunately, that's just going to take a little more digging into to know exactly what's going on in that particular situation. But if you're not feeling like you want to submit it into the lab or go along that route, obviously I would take these 2 out. They have lived their life, and I would actually probably consider taking this 3rd one out just to have a nice clean line here, so we know that we're not having any of that material left behind that could still potentially spread to the healthier plant tissue. And then we could give everything a good protective spray with a broad spectrum fungicide, right? Our fungicides we have available to us as homeowners are primarily preventative in nature, so not curative, right? So if we can get rid of everything that's diseased, start with a clean slate, put some curative fungicide out there, and not put some preventative fungicide out there, we're going to be covering all our bases. So I think that would be a good approach.
Celeste, I've got one comment to make too along those mulch that I've already seen in a number of settings because we've had so much rain.
Hmm.
Homeowners have built up such an organic compost, fine mulch that it acts like a sponge. And those just wick up so much water and hold so much water, you lose the porosity of the airspace. Those roots don't dry out, and it literally acts as a sponge. They stay too wet, and over time, if they don't suffocate the plant, it is a very conducive environment for disease pathogens in that profile. So look at that mulch and make sure it's just not staying totally saturated pretty much most of the time.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I'm going to throw this in. This wasn't a question submitted to our portal, but I had someone send me a picture of this last week, and we have been having so much rain in West Tennessee, and they had these beautiful Japanese maples that were newly installed. They were beautiful 2 weeks ago. She's actually my friend, so I saw it when she put it in there, and they were gorgeous. And then she sent me this picture. She was like, "All the leaves are falling off." And I said, "Girl, go out there and see if it's standing in water." And she pulled back. She actually has a rock mulch instead of organic mulch. She pulled that back, and I could just see the water pooling at the top. And I'm like, we've got to pull those out. They're suffocating, they're drowning. And it's not even a particularly low lying area. It's just that the soils are so saturated that plant can't breathe. So if you've got some new installs that are showing some stress, I'm always going to be going to let's check out what's happening with our water and air exchange capacity for those roots. Definitely. Okay, cool. So, Lee, was there anyone question that jumped out to you or anybody else in the ornamental area? And I can be hunting the picture, or I can just pick another one and start us off if we'd rather do it that way.
So I guess I don't know. I'm kind of torn on talking about Leland Cypress. I mean, I want to. I know it's a common call for many of us. I think maybe we should touch on it. I mean, there's plenty of articles online. The reason I say that is I've had probably 3 calls this week on Leland Cypress.
Yeah.
I get about 25 calls a year on Leland Cypress, y'all. Lelands were kind of like the Bradford pear of yesteryear, is almost what I would say. You know, Bradfords were introduced into the US in the 50s. We used them extensively in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even up to the 90s. They were a great tree. They were a showstopper. We loved them. Now, here we are down the road another 20 years, and we're saying, maybe they're not so great. And I think the same is becoming true with Lelands. You know, they were a great green wall. They're fast growing, but we know that means they're short lived. We see Ceridium canker, we see Passiflora needle blight, Phytophthora root rots, bot canker, and then we have insects, bagworms, spider mites, and scale are all part of Leland cypress. And unfortunately, we compound these disease and insect issues by our cultural practices, right? I've seen Lelands planted as close as 3 feet apart. I've seen them planted 8 feet, 10 feet. But really, for Lelands, you know, they're a 25-foot wide species. So we're talking 25 foot on center. That's 12.5 foot. Each tree can grow towards itself before they start touching. So in addition to that, often Lelands don't go into a mulch bed. We don't ever water them. We just put them out. We love them for 20 years, and then we call in a panic after 20 years because they start to die. And unfortunately, at that point, you've fallen in love with that great green wall, but there's nothing that we can do oftentimes short of just some pruning and general management. But you know, I think this is a good moment to stop and say, okay, let's reconsider monocultures, right? Let's go with diverse landscape screens. We know they're more resilient for handling environmental, insect, and disease pressures. So Let me see a row with hollies, alyssum, viburnum, magnolias, junipers, arborvitae, cypress, either fall cypress or Arizona cypress, and then even viburnums and boxwood shrubs can fill in as secondary roles. And yes, I'm okay putting one Leland cypress tree in. I just don't want to see 30 of them in a row. So that's one I definitely wanted to touch on. Yeah, Seth just put a great link in there talking about living screens. That's one, and I think that one follows also really closely the juniper question from the gentleman that
Yes.
moved from Seattle.
And
Yes,
and in addition to that juniper question, we have since had two more put
two
in
more.
that, two more questions on browning
Gotcha.
junipers. And someone brought me a sample of browning juniper yesterday.
Oh no.
And I mean, it goes on and on. So junipers, well, a plant that we typically feel like are super hardy, I mean, are also showing some signs and symptoms of some diseases that we're not usually seeing right in them. So definitely we'll want to touch on that for sure. Um, well, so I guess where I was going with that when I said want to touch on that is I'm not exactly sure what's going on with a lot of these junipers, other than like tip blight. I have seen some, tip blight where you've got some like browning of the tips of those needles, but it's not like a crunchy brown. It's usually kind of a tan to kind of gray color. So definitely have been seeing that quite a bit. Don't want people to confuse that with what you see on the inside, right, of the plant. We're naturally going to have some browning and foliage dying there on the interior of the plant just from shading out. This is going to be happening on the outside on the tips. So definitely just wanted folks to be aware and
Yeah.
conscientious of that.
I agree, Celeste. And his looked a little bit more interior, if I'm not mistaken. I saw a little more of the brown on the interior of the limbs. And, that's not immediate cause for concern. That could be as a result of overshading from the canopy as it increases. I don't know what the background looks like. It could be underneath a tree line, that's causing us to have a lot of shade. We know junipers love hot, full sun typically. I did mention that maybe look for spruce spider mites, do that white paper test, go out and hit a limb and see if any spider mites fall onto that white sheet of paper. And he had mentioned that they weren't under irrigation, so it could be some drought stress in previous years as well. The question was, do I underwater or overhead water? And always underwater, right? Especially with junipers because of those needle cast diseases that we've talked about. Celeste just mentioned a few, but Passiflora, Phomopsis, or Cospra, those are common on junipers and they are spore producers. So if splashing water is hitting, we're moving those spores throughout that canopy more and more. So water the soil, not the plant.
Yeah, yes, good point. And I'm going to throw out there, you mentioned briefly bagworms. It seems early in our mind for bagworms, but in West Tennessee, they're already here and they're already active. So if you haven't been thinking about those, actually now is the time you need to be going out and scouting for them because hopefully they're still going to be small, young, and actively feeding and haven't completely built their bag around them yet. So insecticides applied right now could actually be effective at helping you control them if you have an issue. We were at Discovery Park of America in Union City yesterday with our Western Region Master Gardener bus tour, and the grounds manager, Mr. John Watkins, was taking us on some tours, and he actually, while we were on a tour, noticed some of their junipers browning, and he was like, "What is that?" And he walked over there just to check things out, and bagworms. I mean, it's crazy. So it's not too early. It may be in our minds, but it's not in reality. So be on the lookout for certain for bagworms. Cool. Okay, so I have one more question on the ornamental side before we shift over, and it has to do with hydrangeas, right? Hydrangeas are always a favorite of ours to talk about. And the submission says, okay, I need to replace some endless summer hydrangea that are not happy with their location. They get sun from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is their second year in the ground, but they still get wilted in the late morning. They also are infected with Cercospora leaf spot, and I treated them with Daconil all spring and summer last year, but it didn't help much, which is what we know, right? Once it's already there. I know there are other treatment options. They're they're just a pain. They don't like the location anyway. She's going in the right direction. I think she's considering moving them, right? She's just getting sick of trying to manage them and keep that fungus from spreading. And so she's asking, should she try to dig them up? Should she relocate them to another area? Should she just start all over? Should she pick a different species of hydrangea? And these are all excellent questions. And so I want to show you a picture if I can share my screen. Here we go. So this is the area. So these are the two endless summer, I guess. This isn't endless summer because it's white, but these two very well maybe. And you can see they're already showing some wilting, and she's just right there in mid-morning, and also struggling with some leaf spot diseases. So my recommendation would be that macrophylla hydrangeas, big leaf hydrangeas, um, are going to appreciate more shade. But I know that we see some larger mature specimens that are getting, morning sun for longer periods of time that seem that like they're doing well. Those plants are well established, their root systems are more expansive, they're able to access more moisture in the soil. And so maybe in certain situations, that's why you're seeing some macrophyllas that are holding up a bit better in, sunnier conditions. But it can be hard to get those to establish when they're young. Also, the more sun that they're exposed to, the more issue you're going to have with that Cercospora leaf spot, which seems counterintuitive because most of the time we're encouraging people to put plants into sunny areas to help with foliar drying. But in this particular situation, the more sun, the worse the leaf spot. So I think that if you have a place where they could be happier, where they could get some more shade, it could be completely feasible for you to dig these plants up and relocate them. They're only 2 years old. The root systems probably haven't, grown too far out into that soil of the bed. So you could definitely do that. And when you come back in, don't come back in with another macrophylla. Let's shift gears. Look at possibly a paniculata. Those are sun-loving hydrangea. They're going to have a different look. So, the leaf looks different, the blooms look different. The blooms are predominantly white to cream and chartreusey in color, but lots of different height options available. Used to, they were just huge, and everybody's like, oh, the paniculatas are too big, right? Those aren't going to fit into my landscape. But we've got lots of smaller cultivars available now. Puffer fish, I don't know, bobo. I mean, there's all kinds of them, hundreds. So lots of options out there. You might also consider, if you like the look of the macrophylla a little better, and the earlier blooming period, maybe consider looking at a hydrangea arborescens. Annabelle is one, Invincible is another. So lots of options in that realm as well. They're not going to get quite as tall. So probably you're looking at like 3.5, 4 feet is your maximum height for those. And they still have that snowball bloom in shades of white and cream and pinks. So you have tons of options in hydrangea. Just because this one isn't working in the spot, don't feel like that's boxing you in, okay? So I think that we can work with that. What do y'all think?
I like it, Celeste. One other thing in that image, I don't know if you noticed, but it looked like the plants were progressively smaller going towards the left. So I
Yes.
might stick a soil probe in that ground as well and see if there's not construction debris or something. Maybe that may not be reality, but even those little, I don't know if they were arborvitae or what they were in that front. They
I
looked a
think they
little
were the
smaller,
little, yeah,
little
earth
midget.
or
Yeah,
bug.
arborvitae or anyway, that might be a thought as well. Stick a probe in the ground, see if it's limited rooting. But I think Celeste hit that one on the head for sure.
All right, everybody, let's talk about hydrangea. Okay.